Burning Hope. It opens with a red pill called 8-Ball exploring an orphanage. It's an old beat-down old church. The operator on the other end of the phone is called Sharon. 8-Ball says, "I bet the Oracle didn't see this coming." He then walks into the church and it's all been burnt to a crisp. Everything is just debris. He raises the point that, of course, the news would have picked up on this. I mean, it's an orphanage that has been burnt down. What that means is, this is the agents changing something. The orphanage has not been burned down. He means that he could be going into a trap. Sharon says that she has an exit 2 blocks away, but it's too late. 8-Ball sees the fire rising as he burns to death. An unspecified amount of time later, Sharon is talking with Duncan, someone else on their ship in the real world. We learn that there's a tag program active right now. It all comes from a quest that they got from the Oracle. We then see another operative of the crew called Link. So this Link proposes that they do something, because as long as the tag program is active, they're kind of bait. So Link goes back into the Matrix, into the burnt out church. All we know is they're looking for this thing that the Oracle told them to look for. He sees some graffiti on the wall. It's a little white rabbit. Link says, "It's something that the Oracle said, and the child would be Hope. We thought this was about saving ourselves, but that's her name, Hope. She has the tag, Charon." So then Link suddenly gets the realization they are looking for someone called Hope. He gets closer and closer. Charon is reading a high signal on the tag. Suddenly then he sees there's someone else there in the church. He walks a bit further, and it's an old woman. Strangely, the tag is beeping like crazy, but then Link realizes maybe Hope is this old woman. But then agents turn up and start firing at Link. Link fires back, running towards the tag, running towards who they think is Hope. He goes to the roof of the building and sees another person. This time, it's a man, an older man. Link realizes what's happened. This is Hope. Hope is someone who has the ability to change their appearance, a shapeshifter. And he can tell this is Hope because this old man has a white rabbit stuffed toy. They both get to the exit and safely rejoin the crew in the real world. Bits and pieces of information. This tells the story of basically how the machine uprising happened. So first, it opens with a Zion Archives account of a trial happening between a lawyer named Clarence Drummond speaking to the court and speaking to a robot called B166ER. The year displayed shows that this is taking place in 2090 to 2139, so at some point within that time frame. The account says, a B1 series domestic droid appears to have malfunctioned and killed 2 men, Jared E. Krause and Martin Kreutz. Drummond says, "Can you tell us in your own words what happened that afternoon?" What's happening here is this flashback. B166ER basically being downtrodden and insulted by his employer. Martin saying, "Oh yeah, we'll take the robot home down to the scrapyard," or something like that. We then hear from the courtroom. Drummond says, "Can you tell us what you were thinking at that moment?" "I was aware of a surge in my memory drive as I recalled my entire performance record. I was unable to duplicate Mr. Krause's conclusion." B166ER defends himself by refusing to be sent to the scrap heap, which he does by killing Martin Kreutz. Gerard's then begging B166ER to be spared. Big metally robot fingers on Gerard's face, crushing Gerard's head. The closing statement from Clarence Drummond. He's saying that the robot is not technically a citizen according to United States law, but then he's saying maybe they should. Maybe they should have the same rights. This robot was just trying to defend themselves. Then we see a couple more headlines. USA Today, droid faces termination. We see another headline, the Million Machine March. Androids and liberal sympathizers flooded the streets of the nation's capital today in protest of the sentence handed down by the New York State Appellate Court. And as we see in the Second Renaissance, this is what kicks-start the entire human versus machine war. If you want to find out exactly how that happened, click in the top right corner right now. Sweating the small stuff. This follows Des. He's saying how he has a girlfriend called Mia, and she was running drugs for a cartel boss called Marlowe. He actually convinces her to stop doing that because the life is just too crazy and too dangerous. She says, "Take a good long look out of that window and tell me if you see any white picket fences, moron." So basically she's saying that she doesn't see a happy life, she sees only an illegal crime life, and that's why she's into this stuff. Des then opens up about something he's been feeling. He has been feeling that something is wrong in the world. It has a close-up of a coffee cup and some sugar going into the coffee. We go closer and closer and closer when we see what Des sees, and that is some slight kind of green code. He even says, "And the worst of it is that I feel like these guys in black are watching my every move." Suddenly then there's a huge explosion. Des thinks that it's the guys in the black suits, but what we actually see is some gangsters saying, "Marlowe says hello," which means that these are Marlowe's gangsters coming to kill Mia. In that moment of extreme anxiety for Des, he then sees the Matrix clearly. Everything slows down and he sees the numbers. He sees the bullets flying slowly through the air and he realizes what's happening. He realizes that he is in a fake world. Mia manages to kill all the gunmen herself. Des managed to slow down the gunman a little bit. Now the reason we know this is because right after this, some agents turn up at his house, which means they saw the glitch in the Matrix. So the agents appear and Des and Mia run. He ends up with saying, when it comes to reality, you take what you can get. A life less empty. We open on this very kind of generic apartment complex. We see Tiara. She is looking out the window and she's saying how it's always the same. All the days blur into each other. She goes onto her computer and looks at some of the things she's recorded in the past. One of these things is some old photos of her when she was a child with a white rabbit stuffed toy. She then has a sudden memory of someone coming into her life. Someone that looks just like Morpheus. He offered her 2 pills. As she remembers this guy, who, we know as Morpheus, she opens up something on her computer called The Matrix Has You. This little file on her computer means that she cannot shake this memory she had of The Matrix. We go back to this moment she had with Morpheus. She actually takes the blue pill. In her own words, I ran with my tail shoved between my trembling legs. She then compares herself to these other huge people in history, like Napoleon, Joan of Arc, Einstein. She says, all insane radical extremists. Good or bad, they all jumped off headfirst. Some crashed and burned, some became geniuses. But all tried in the face of fear and doubt. I didn't. She has learned to hate herself for taking the blue pill, but at the end, she moves this Matrix file from her computer into the deletion bin. She ends by saying, my regret is eternal. In 1977, London, England. One day, when Goliath was a teenager, the entire world around him melted away until total blackness was around him. He meets a nicely dressed man who we assume is an agent, who comments on how big Goliath is, and that there has been a missile attack on 200,000 people hooked up to a CPU, which is why Goliath's world melted away, but of course he doesn't really know what's going on. The world then returns back to him, and he has deja vu of the past 20 minutes, implying that the machines had created a backup of the past 20 minutes within the Matrix. 10 years later, he's on a subway, and he experiences an infinite loop of the passengers leaving the train again and again. Everything then fades to white, and the agent appears again, telling Goliath that they just talked 37 minutes ago, despite Goliath thinking that 10 years had passed. The agent explains that it was aliens that attacked London in the first place, and they've been running an accelerated version of the Matrix for the past 37 minutes in the real world to generate computing power to formulate a retaliation plan, which is why Goliath has felt like 10 years had passed. The entire world that he's been living in has been accelerated. Goliath briefly wakes up in his real-world pod. Suddenly he then wakes up, back on the train, but everything feels back to normal. He talks to a woman next to him named Susan, and they eventually move in together, but she moves out after he comments on how his world feels fake. After experiencing even more deja vu, he then suddenly wakes up back as his 16-year-old self, implying that the machines have now finished whatever retaliation plan they've been devising and are ready to put it into action. Goliath joins the Royal Air Force, where the recruiting officer happens to be the same agent from before, but Goliath only barely remembers him, of course, because he's had his memory wiped. Goliath marries a woman named Sandra and quickly rises up the ranks of the RAF, eventually getting the clearance to fly strange spacecraft. He thinks 10 years pass, which was probably just another 30 minutes in the real world. The agent appears at his house and tells Goliath that he'll be piloting a PL-47, which is a spacecraft that he has now mastered after flying it again and again and again in this Matrix reality. He then wakes up out of the Matrix, outside of his real-world pod, and floats on a strange disc to the PL-47 spacecraft. On the way there, he sees the power plants, thousands of other naked humans just waiting to be plugged in. Goliath gets inside the spacecraft and finds that it fits him perfectly. It was made just for his gigantic size. He zooms out from planet Earth into space and sees the alien ship orbiting the moon, looking like a giant fungus. The alien ship hurls asteroids at him, but they miss, so Goliath gets close enough to destroy the alien ship. He's happy for a moment that he saved planet Earth, until the agent explains that it's all just a one-way trip, and he's now doomed to die in space. Goliath asks to be plugged back into the dream world from before, so he can live out his life with his original wife, Susan. Butterfly. This story cuts back and forth between a red pill being chased by agents and another man called Shang Su simply watering his plants in his flat. At the start, we see DocBot in the real world, hovering above lots of different red pods. This is an exact parallel to a butterfly within the Matrix hovering over some trees. The text reads, Shang Su had a dream. In the dream, he was a butterfly. The red pill continues to be chased by the agents through the streets. And Shang Su continues to just simply light some incense and see this butterfly float through his flat. The text reads, when he awoke, Shang Su was unsure if he was a man who had dreamed that he was a butterfly, or if he was a butterfly who was dreaming that he was a man. In that moment, Shang Su acknowledges the butterfly as it flies away. The red pill, meanwhile, is cornered by the agents. This little butterfly floats by the red pill, and the red pill sees it. The butterfly then kinda distracts the agent as the red pill dives through the window, bursting through Shang Su's window as glass and stuff goes flying everywhere, and the butterfly flies through as well. A phone is ringing behind him, which is obviously the red pill's exit that he's been aiming for. Shang Su points the red pill in the direction of the phone in the other room as the agents are still trying to shoot at him. The red pill picks up the phone, and Shang Su somehow uses his broomstick to hit all of the guns out of the agents' hands. The agents then pick up their guns, fire at the red pill, but it's too late. The red pill has made his exit. They then shoot Shang Su right there. The butterfly flies by and flies out the window into the open landscape. The text reads, in truth, Shang Su was neither man nor butterfly, and yet he was both. A sword of a different colour. An unnamed old man was somehow able to escape his pod in the real world and then hid at a nearby dumping ground that bordered the fetus fields. Meanwhile, the Resistance sends out a hovercraft to scout for weaknesses in the machine's defences. They actually fly too close to the ground, and it crashes. Only Nak was left alive. He was seriously injured, but he was alive. The old man somehow manages to get Nak into safety before the Sentinels could reach him. The old man recognises the plugs in Nak's body, describing them as silvery bites, and that they both suffered dragon stings. Eventually started to see the old man might be slightly crazy. But then again, Nak reminds himself that everyone needs a bit of fantasy to be happy sometimes. Nak tries to convince the old man to help with the rebellion, trying to free all these other red pills and all this stuff, just like the rest of Zion is trying to do. But the old man rejects it, saying, nope, that doesn't fly with my personal quest to slay all these dragons. One day later, Nak wakes up and he sees that the old man has gone. He has left Nak a package. The package contains a book on the Trojan War and a drawing of them both, an arm over each other's shoulders raising a sword with the other, with the title, Freedom. Nak then manages to look through the kind of periscope thing and see an explosion in the distance, implying that the old man, while he managed to take down some sentinels, he also died in the process. There are no flowers in the real world. The scene opens with an absolute scene of destruction. Rocket standing over a phone booth that has been destroyed with a few other dead bodies around him, and a car crashed behind him. Shortly after leaving, their operator, Rook, called in to inform the operatives that their ship, the Mariner, was currently under attack in the real world. So that's Rocket's problem here, is he's stuck in the Matrix because his real world ship had been attacked. Rocket contacted the Resistance for help and was given a safe house back in nearby Scottsdale. For days, Rocket awaited rescue in a safe house, all while resisting with his mind, trying to withstand the pain from his physical body's injuries. Because remember, his real world body is stuck there, hasn't been receiving food, hasn't been receiving water, which means that within the Matrix, Rocket is basically slowly dying. During these days, he'd be visited by a Resistance operative called King. Rocket was saying that in the past, in the Matrix, he had a girlfriend called Mona. King convinces Rocket to go and find Mona because really, it's not fake or meaningless when it's real love. So, Rocket goes to reconnect with Mona. After a romantic night with Mona was interrupted by Rocket's worsening leg, Rocket, considering the possibility of soon dying, immediately started to distance himself from Mona. He runs away to a diner. He got into a scuffle with his own gang. Also, he reveals some truths about the Matrix to the spectating diners. He's saying that you're all slaves to the machines and all stuff like this. This tipped off the agent to Rocket's activities. News comes to Rocket from King that he would be rescued soon. Given new hope by the news, Rocket wanted to meet Mona once more, but then Agent Brown appeared. He phased into this old man in the street, so King had to shoot the agent. After Rocket found the hardline location for the phone, he called Mona, asking her to quickly meet with him. She immediately went, meeting Rocket at his location. He then informed her of his need to disappear, but also promised to come back for her. Mona promised to wait, but also promised to join Rocket wherever they needed to go upon his return. Then the phone rings. Mona was suddenly possessed by Agent Brown. Rocket hesitated to shoot Mona because of course he loved her, but of course it's too late. The agent takes control of Mona's body and then lifts up Rocket by his neck. Agent Brown strangles Rocket and he dies. The Miller's Tale. This opens with a young Morpheus waiting at a table within Zion with lots of other freed humans. Someone at the head of the table starts telling a story. He tells the story of Jeffrey. Jeffrey was always someone who loved looking back on the luxuries or small luxuries that humans used to have. For example, he finds DVDs. In one of the DVDs, he watches a film where the focus was on the lovely atmosphere. This is what convinced Jeffrey to say, no, I'm not happy with my current life in the real world. I'm going to find some wheat and create some bread. Other Zion operatives say, no, this is a fool's errand, you'll die, it's not worth it for just bread. But this doesn't stop Jeffrey and his crew. They go through the surface, dodging sentinels, dodging certain death, but no, eventually they find seeds. Jeffrey, alone, then finds a place on the surface to create a small bread farm. He uses some ultraviolet lights that he found on the surface, plugs them into the pylons that are still working on the surface because of course the sentinels use these pylons to power the Matrix, and before you know it, he has a bread farm. But this wouldn't last too long, as eventually there is the Battle of the Wheat Fields, where Jeffrey is killed by sentinels. But because of this, Zion now holds a bread feast twice a year to honour Jeffrey's sacrifices. We then see a young Morpheus enjoying the bread. We see that Spoon Boy is just walking through the city. He's in Mega City and he sees a shop full of TVs showing an art piece by an artist called Raven Underwell. And all of these sculptures are causing people to have nightmares. These sculptures are, as we know, sentinels. Every time a plugged-in human sees something that resembles a sentinel, it triggers a slight thing in the back of their mind that reminds them that they are in the pod. So Spoon Boy sees this art exhibit. The TV journalist, she's saying, oh, I've got my ticket, so I'm going to be there. But then suddenly, the ticket pops out of her hand and appears in Spoon Boy's hand. He walks in, listens to Raven Underwell being interviewed on the TV, and she tells the story of how, in her words, she had a dream where she was in a big red pod and saw all these strange floating black monsters with tentacles and stuff. Of course, we know what she actually did was wake up. So in her words, she then wakes up and draws all these crazy creatures and creates them into a sculpture. Raven then walks up to Spoon Boy and asks him what he thinks of the exhibit. She then has a vision. She suddenly blacks out. She envisions all of her sculptures coming to life, killing people and destroying the entire city. But with nowhere to run, she sees a telephone booth, which was actually ringing. The voice on the phone says, "It is not enough to believe what you see. You must also understand what you see." She looks to the side and sees a broken wall and beyond it, an endless graveyard. In that moment, she realizes that those weird floating machines that she turned her art exhibit into are not these kind of nice, motherly caretakers. No, they are her authoritative evil overseers. Suddenly she pops back to reality, or not reality, she pops back out of her vision and she's in the gallery, everything is as normal, but she has suddenly changed her mind. She says, "No, I'm not okay, I'm a fool, please forgive me." The hovercraft Polaris was loading up on the surface when the operator, Twist, detected that a sentinel was patrolling nearby. Nova tried to gather back the crew members still on the surface when Flint, gazing at the ruins of the long-lost human city they were in, decided to mysteriously stay instead. Nova, uninvited, followed Flint as he took off, believing that Flint was heading off to collect more artifacts. During their expedition, however, Flint had been ignoring the artifacts that they were supposed to be collecting. Nova then recalled how people had believed that Flint, who used to be a captain, had changed since losing the ship to a sentinel attack. He had gone mad after losing the Perquad. He blamed himself. So now he goes on these doomed ventures to the surface because he simply doesn't care about his own life anymore. Nova could no longer deny Flint's madness as she found herself standing on top of the Perquad's wreckage, realizing that she was not following someone out to collect, but instead someone out for a hunt. Flint quickly instructed Nova to hide while he himself stood his ground in preparation to fight the approaching machine, muttering the words, "No more running," as he readied his spear. Flint evaded the Sentinel's first attack, but of course the spear is no match for the Sentinel, and the Sentinel kills Flint. She turns to the Sentinel with her own spear, ready for the Sentinel's attack. The Sentinel zooms at her, but she dodges, hits the Sentinel, and eventually she destroys it. She collects Flint's body along with the rest of the Perquad crew and buries them all together. She finds all these other books, which is exactly what Flint was trying to find in the first place, and collects them all together. She tears out the final page of the book, Moby Dick, and leaves it at Flint's grave. She then decides to not use Flint's death as a warning to other people in Zion, but instead using Flint's tale to inspire other people within Zion to become collectors just like herself. Thank you for watching that, everybody. If it was a help to you and you really liked learning about the Matrix lore, then please subscribe to Jam Punch and I'll be releasing a brand new Matrix Explained video every single week. My name is George, this is Jam Punch, and I'll see you next time.